My name is Eleanor Vance, and I am 58 years old. For 35 of those years, I've been a financial planner in Boston, guiding people toward a secure retirement. I've lived my own advice, I've been frugal, I've invested wisely, and I've built a life of quiet stability. My reward, the one thing I bought purely for myself, is a small, cedar, shingled lodge nestled in the Green Mountains of Vermont. It's my sanctuary. It's the place I go to hear myself think, to escape the spreadsheets and the stock tickers and, if I'm honest, to escape the one part of my life I've never been able to balance: my sister, Chloe. The snow was coming down in thick, lazy flakes as I guided my Subaru along the winding roads. Each curve of the mountain pass took me farther from the city, farther from the insistent chime of my phone, farther from the low, great anxiety that had become my constant companion. With every mile, I could feel the tension in my shoulders begin to dissolve. 10 days. 10 days of absolute, uninterrupted peace for Christmas. The dashboard clock read 2:17 p.m. I was making good time. My lodge, my haven, was just ahead. This place was my bulwark against the world. I'd bought the land with my first major bonus and spent a decade paying for the construction, board by board. It was mine, in a way nothing else had ever been. I've always been the responsible one. While my colleagues in their 30s were blowing their money on European vacations or flashy cars, I was playing the long game. Security. Stability. That was my mantra. It had to be. Our parents, God rest them, were wonderful people, but they were artists, not planners. When they passed away in a car accident 20 years ago, they left behind a mountain of beautiful memories and a molehill of actual money. And they left me Chloe. She's 51. But in her mind, I think she's permanently stalled at 19. I love my sister, I truly do. But my God, she is an anchor. 5 years my junior, she has drifted through life on a cloud of good intentions and terrible decisions, always expecting me to be the safety net. Our mother's voice has echoed in my head for decades, from a time I barely remember. Be good to your sister, Eleanor. She's more fragile than you. A fragile became entitled. My protection became her expectation. Christmas, in particular, had become a trial. Her neediness would ramp up with the holidays, a blizzard of demands for attention, for money, for me to host her and her flavor of the month boyfriend. This year, I had finally put my foot down. I told her in October, Chloe, I am going to the lodge for Christmas. Alone, I need the rest. She'd pouted, of course. She'd tried to guilt me. But it's our first Christmas since whatever minor tragedy she was currently fixated on. But she's 51. She has a long-term, long-suffering boyfriend, Rob. She didn't need me to play cruise director for her holiday. The lodge appeared around the final bend, its dark wood a stark, beautiful contrast to the deep snow. It looked like a postcard. My heart swelled. And then it dropped into my stomach. My circular driveway, which should have been empty, held 2 vehicles. One was Chloe's bright red SUV. The other was a mud-splattered silver pickup truck I didn't recognize. What on earth? My first thought was a break-in. My second was that something terrible had happened to Chloe, some emergency that sent her running to the only safe place she knew. My pulse hammered as I parked and fumbled for my phone, my thumb hovering over 911. But this didn't look like an emergency. The windows of my cabin were blazing with warm light, and I could hear music. Not the classical station I kept the radio set to, but loud, thumping Christmas pop music. I trudged through the snow, my boots sinking nearly to my knees. The key was cold in my hand, but I had a sinking feeling I wouldn't need it. I was right. I turned the knob, and the heavy oak door swung open easily. I stood in the entryway, frozen. The scene before me was so bizarre, so completely wrong, that for a half-second I wondered if I'd driven to the wrong house. My house, my quiet, tasteful sanctuary, was gone. In its place was a party, a massive Christmas tree. Not my simple, elegant Fraser fir with white lights, but a garish, blinking monstrosity dripping with tinsel and multi-colored baubles, stood in the corner. Tacky garlands were draped over every surface, including my bookshelves. Scented candles, cinnamon, and holiday spice fought a war in the air, creating a cloying, overwhelming smell. And there were people, strangers. So many strangers, lounging on my furniture as if they owned it. A man I'd never seen before, with a broad stomach and a red Santa's Naughty List t-shirt, was asleep in my reading chair, the one I'd saved for 2 years to buy. A group of 20 Somethings were clustered around my kitchen island, laughing raucously and mixing drinks in my late grandmother's crystal punch bowl. And there, in the center of it all, was Chloe. She was wearing a sparkling green dress that was just a little too young for her, her blonde hair piled high. She was holding court, a glass of wine in her hand. Beside her stood Rob, looking uncomfortable, and an older couple I vaguely recognized. Barbara and Frank, Rob's parents. The music was so loud that for a full 10 seconds, nobody saw me. I just stood there, the cold wind blowing in from the open door, my suitcase handle clenched in my numb hand. It was Rob who saw me first. His eyes went wide, and the smile slid off his face. He nudged Chloe. The laughter died. One by one, heads turned. The music continued its cheerful assault, a ridiculous soundtrack to a frozen, awful tableau. My eyes drifted to the mantelpiece above my stone fireplace. For 20 years, that mantel has held one thing: my parents' wedding photograph. It was gone. In its place, in a gleaming silver frame, was a smiling portrait of Rob's family: Barbara, Frank, Rob, and his sister. My parents' photo had been moved to a side table, half hidden behind a giant poinsettia. Oh, the sound barely escaped me. Chloe's voice, sharp and bright, shattered the silence. "Eleanor! You're early." Her eyes were wide, but not with guilt. Not with surprise. With annoyance. "I figured you'd be stuck in traffic. The weather is just awful, isn't it?" The room was utterly silent, save for Bing Crosby. Rob was staring at his feet. Barbara and Frank looked confused, glancing between me and Chloe. "Anyway," Chloe continued, waving her wine glass, that familiar, passive-aggressive tone dripping from every word. "It's so nice you could make it back to our cabin for Christmas. Frank, Barbara, you remember my sister, Eleanor, right? Our cabin." The word struck me like a physical slap. Our. I looked around the room again, really seeing it this time. This wasn't a party. This was an occupation. There were suitcases stacked by the guest room door. A pile of mail on my entryway table. Rob's heavy winter coat was hanging on the peg that was, and had always been, mine. A memory sharp and stinging surfaced from 40 years ago. My 10th birthday. My mother had baked a cake. My friends were supposed to come over. But Chloe, then 5, had spiked a low-grade fever. Just a cold. But my mother had insisted, "We have to cancel, Eleanor. Your sister needs quiet. We'll celebrate your birthday next week." We never did. Protect Chloe. She's weaker than you. She needs more care. I had spent a lifetime absorbing that message, putting her wants before my needs, her whims before my boundaries. The pattern was so ingrained I didn't even see it anymore. Sacrifice was my default setting. But standing there, in the doorway of the home I had built, watching strangers drink my best wine from my grandmother's crystal, something inside me didn't just crack. It shattered. I looked at my 51-year-old sister, who was watching me with a defiant, challenging glint in her eye. She was waiting for the familiar script. She was waiting for me to yell, for me to get flustered, for me to demand an explanation, which she would then twist into me being unreasonable and ruining her holiday. She expected me to make a scene, and then, ultimately, to sigh, give in, and go sleep in the drafty guest room while she played Lady of the Manor. Not this time. So if you're finding this story speaks to you, or if you've ever felt taken for granted, please take a moment to click that like button. It truly helps. And subscribe if you'd like to hear more real life stories like this one. Don't forget to hit the notification bell. I let the silence stretch. I let every person in that room feel the weight of my presence, of their intrusion. My fingernails dug into the palms of my hands. I uncurled them one by one. I took a long, slow breath. When I finally spoke, my voice wasn't a shout. It was cold. It was quiet. And it was absolutely clear. I did not look at Chloe. I looked directly at Barbara, Rob's mother, who was clutching her cardigan closed as if to ward off a chill. "Barbara." "Frank," I said, my voice cutting cleanly through the music. "I'm afraid there has been a profound misunderstanding." Barbara stammered. "Oh, my Eleanor, we had no idea. Chloe told us, she said you were spending the holiday in Aspen, that you insisted we use the lodge, that you wanted us to feel at home." A small, bitter puff of air escaped my lips. Of course she did. Rob, to his credit, looked like he was about to be physically ill. "Chloe, you said she knew. You told me you cleared it." "Oh, stop being so dramatic, both of you," Chloe snapped, her face flushing. "It's a big house. There's plenty of room. Eleanor, don't be so selfish. It's Christmas." I held up a hand. Not to her. I still refused to look at her. I kept my gaze fixed on Barbara and Frank. I am going to drive to the nearest town and check into a motel, I stated. I looked at my watch. It was 2:45 p.m. I will be back tomorrow at 3:00 p.m. By that time, I expect every one of you to be gone. I expect my home to be restored to exactly the condition I left it in. That means my parents' photograph back on the mantel. My grandmother's punch bowl cleaned and put away. And all of this tinsel, gone. The room was so quiet I could hear the snow melting on the roof. The man in my reading chair was awake now, staring at me. If my home is not spotless, I continued, and if you are not all gone, I will not be yelling. I will not be negotiating. I will be calling the state police and having every person on my property arrested for trespassing. Chloe gasped. Eleanor? You wouldn't. That's our family. I said, finally turning my eyes to her, the coldness in my stare making her flinch. Her your guests. In my house. You have embarrassed them and you have humiliated me. You have 24 hours. I had no idea she would do this, Rob mumbled, his face pale. I am so sorry, Eleanor. Save it, Rob, I said, my voice flat. Barbara, Frank. I'm sorry your holiday was ruined. You were put in an impossible position. Barbara rose, her face a mask of polite horror. Frank, we're packing. Now, we will help clean. I am mortified. She shot a look at Chloe that was pure ice. The other strangers, the younger crowd, were already grabbing their coats and bags, scrambling to get out of the line of fire. I didn't stay to watch the chaos. I didn't engage. I didn't give Chloe the fight she so desperately wanted, the emotional fuel she ran on. I simply turned around, walked out, and closed my door. My door, softly behind me. I got in my car, the engine turning over with a reassuring rumble. I backed out of the driveway, not once looking in the rearview mirror. The snow was falling harder now, but it felt cleansing. Each flake was wiping away decades of resentment. 2 hours later, I was in a clean, sterile room at a roadside Best Western. The room smelled of industrial carpet cleaner and faint cigarette smoke. It was nothing like my beautiful, cedar-scented lodge. But as I sat on the stiff comforter, I felt a stillness I hadn't felt in years. I had drawn a line, not in the sand, but in solid rock. My anger, which had been a white-hot inferno, began to cool. As the hours passed, it left an exhausted calm in its wake, and by the time the sun rose, filtering through the cheap polyester curtains, the calm had sharpened into something new. It was clarity. This wasn't just about a cabin. It was about a lifetime. This wasn't about Chloe taking my house. It was about her absolute, bone-deep belief that she was entitled to it. It was about me and my decades of silent, complicit enabling. I picked up the small notepad from the desk. I began to write. Item the 20,000 I loaned her in 2009 for her gourmet cupcake business, which never sold a single cupcake and which I knew I'd never see again. Item co. signing the lease on her Burlington apartment 12 years ago, the apartment she still lives in, and whose rent I've had to cover, just this once, at least 20 times. Item the legal fees. Oh God, the legal fees. The DUI in her 20s. The lawsuit from the caterer she stiffed for a party. Every time I'd swept in. Item the medical bills, not real ones. The endless pays for alternative therapies, the herbalists, the acupuncturists, the spiritual healers, all because she was too stressed to get a 9-to-5 job. The list went on and on. My promise to our dying mother to protect Chloe had metastasized. It had become a sickness. It had kept me chained to an idea of family that was draining my bank account, my emotional reserves, and my life. And it had kept Chloe a perpetual, resentful child. I looked at the list. I remembered the look in her eyes when she'd said, or cabin. Not entitlement. Resentment. As if my help, my success, was a personal insult to her, a constant reminder of her own failures. My protection had become her prison. My sacrifice had become her sentence. We were both trapped. I picked up my phone. My first call was not to the cabin. It was to my lawyer. Good morning, Bill, I said. I need you to draw up some papers. It's regarding my sister. At 2:45 p.m., I checked out of the motel. I drove back up the mountain, the roads now plowed. I had no idea what I would find. A still, occupied house. A note of defiance. A trashed-out shell. I pulled into my driveway. It was empty. The snow was pristine, unmarked. I walked up the porch steps, my heart in my throat. I put my key in the lock. It turned. I pushed the door open. The cabin was silent, and it was spotless. I stood in the doorway, stunned. It wasn't just clean. It was perfect. Unnaturally perfect. The floors shone. The kitchen counters gleamed. The gaudy tree was gone. The tacky garlands had vanished. My simple, tasteful decorations were gone, too. They'd obviously just thrown everything out. I walked to the fireplace. My parents' wedding photo was back on the mantel. It was perfectly centered. The glass had been wiped so clean it was invisible. On the coffee table was a single white envelope. My name, Eleanor, was written on it in Chloe's looping, dramatic script. I sat in my reading chair, and opened it. It wasn't a letter. It was a check, for 500. In the memo line, she had written, for the wine and food. It was, I realized with a jolt, the first time she had ever paid me back for anything. My phone buzzed. A text from Chloe. We left. It's clean. I'm sorry. I looked at the check. I looked at the text. I looked around my silent, beautiful, empty home. And I did something I hadn't expected. I laughed. It was a short, sharp, bitter sound. 500. A down payment on a lifetime of debt. It was a start. That night I built a fire. I opened a bottle of 1998 Cabernet I had been saving. I sat in my chair, sipped my wine, and listened to the house settle. This peace. This was victory. But I knew this was only the first step. The next few days, I didn't just relax. I planned. I opened my laptop. The email to Chloe's property manager was first. Effective February 1st, I will no longer be subsidizing the rent for Unit 4B. Please proceed according to the terms of her lease. Next, a certified letter to the credit card company, removing myself as the guarantor on the card she used for emergencies. Finally, I called the lawyer, Bill, back. The trust our parents left. I said. I know it's not much, but Chloe has been taking an advance against her half for years, and I've been covering the difference. No more. From now on, her half is her half. When it's gone, it's gone. Each email sent, each call made, felt like a brick being lifted from my chest. This wasn't revenge. I took no pleasure in it. It was a correction. A balancing of the scales that had been tipped for far too long. The first domino fell 2 weeks later. An email from the property manager. Ms. Miller is 3 weeks behind on rent. We have served her a 14-day notice to pay or quit. The old, familiar guilt twisted in my stomach. She'll be homeless. She'll have nowhere to go. It's winter. The old script. I typed my reply, thank you for the update. Please follow your standard procedures. I hit send. I breathed through the guilt. This wasn't cruelty. It was consequences. The phone call I'd been dreading came a month later, on a Tuesday night. I was at my desk in Boston, finishing a portfolio review. Chloe's name flashed on the screen. I let it ring 4 times, then answered. Eleanor. Her voice was a high, thin wail. Thank God, you have to help me. I leaned back in my chair. What's wrong, Chloe? Everything. Everything is wrong. A torrent of grievances poured out. Rob's mother hates me. After we left the cabin, she told Rob I was a leech and unstable. Can you believe her? And Rob, he agreed with her? He just stood there and let her say those things? I heard a cabinet slam in the background. And now, she sobbed, kicking me out. He said I need to grow up and get a job. He said I embarrassed him in front of his family and he's done. The old alarm bells rang. The familiar urge to fix, to soothe, to make it all okay. I pressed my palm against the cool glass of my office window, 12 stories above the city. Please, Elle, her voice dropped to that pleading whisper, the one that had worked on me since she was 5. I just need a little help. Just until I get on my feet. Can I come stay with you? Just for a few weeks. I'll get a job, I promise. Tell Rob you'll talk to him. Fix this. Please, Eleanor, fix this. I closed my eyes. The pattern, the crisis. The plea, my rescue, her temporary gratitude which would soar into resentment. The cycle, spinning on until I died. Chloe, I said. My voice was calm, steady. You are 51 years old. Silence. Then. What? What's that supposed to mean? It means I can't fix your relationship with Rob. I can't fix your finances. And you can't come stay with me. I took a deep breath. You have to take responsibility for your own life. The silence that followed was heavy, metallic. Then her voice returned. And it was no longer pleading. It was acid. You ruined everything, she shrieked, the volume making me pull the phone from my ear. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't be in this mess. You loved it, didn't you? Playing the big strong sister. You made me need you so you could feel superior. You were always the favorite, and now you're abandoning me. Behind her accusations, I heard a terrible, splintering crash. Don't you dare blame her, Chloe! You did this to yourself. It was Rob's voice, cutting in, furious. I hadn't realized he was there. Chloe screamed. No! I'm done staying out of it, he yelled back. Your sister is right! You're a grown woman! You act like a spoiled teenager, and I am done cleaning up your messes. Their argument escalated, a landslide of accusations. Then another crash, glass shattering. Look what you made me do! Chloe shrieked. The call cut off. I sat in the dark of my office, the city lights twinkling below. The sudden silence was absolute. My hand was steady. The urge to call back, to check on her, to race to Burlington. It wasn't there. For the first time in my life, it was just gone. Her storm was not my storm. Her consequences were not mine to bear. I exhaled, a long, slow breath that felt like it unknotted something deep in my spine. I was free. The full story came a few weeks later from Gary, a mutual friend from our hometown. Rob had filed for divorce. It turned out they had secretly gotten married a year prior, something Chloe forgot to tell me. The apartment she'd been evicted from. Rob's parents owned the building, the car she drove. It was Rob's. She had lost everything. Gary said she was staying on a friend's couch. I felt no triumph. No, I told you so, just a quiet, profound sadness. Sometimes, for a seed to grow, it has to be buried in the dark. Spring came to Boston, melting the dirty snow. I thrived. At work, with the constant distraction of Chloe's crisis gone, my mind was sharp. I landed the Westridge account, our firm's biggest client. Mr. Henderson called me into his office and offered me a promotion to senior partner. Something I'd given up on years ago. I reconnected with old friends. My friend Pat and I took a weekend trip to Maine. Eleanor, she said as we sat on a rocky beach, "It's like you're back. For the last 10 years. It was like watching someone drown in slow motion. You were always absent, even when you were here." I thought I was being strong, I admitted. Taking care of my family. A strength isn't about carrying everything, Elle, she said gently. It's about knowing what's yours to carry. I built a new family. A chosen one. People who wanted my company, not my rescue. 3 months after the cabin, my phone rang. Chloe. I answered, this time without apprehension. Eleanor. Her voice was small, trembling. I got a job. As a receptionist at a dental office. It's not much, but that's wonderful, Chloe, I said. And I meant it. I'm sorry, she whispered. For everything. The cabin. Everything, I know, I said. I'm in a program, she added, so quietly I could barely hear. A 12-step program. For a lot of things. I stood at my window, watching the new green leaves on the trees. I'm listening, I said. And for the first time, I wasn't listening for the ask. I was just listening. 6 months later, I was back at the cabin. I'd had a state-of-the-art security system installed. The mantelpiece held my parents' photo, and next to it, a photo of me and Pat in Maine. The cabin hummed with life. I was hosting my first dinner party. My friends, my chosen family, were laughing, their voices filling the space. My friend David raised his glass. To Eleanor, he said, who reminds us all that it's never too late to build the life you want. As I slipped into the kitchen to grab more wine, I saw my phone light up. A text from Chloe. Hey, I'm thinking about taking a class at the community college. Business Basics. Would you mind looking at the course list with me? No rush. Only if you have time. I smiled. A small request. A reasonable one. An acknowledgement of my time. I set the phone down. I'd respond tomorrow. Tonight, I had friends to get back to. I walked back to the party, glass in hand. The peace I felt wasn't the absence of problems. It was the presence of wholeness. Thank you for listening to my story. The lesson I learned, perhaps later than I should have, is that true love for your family must also include love for yourself. That boundaries aren't walls to keep people out. They are fences to protect what's precious inside. It is never too late to teach people how to treat you, and it's never too late to reclaim your own life. Have you ever been in a situation like this? When did you finally have to say, enough is enough? Please share your own wisdom and stories in the comments section below. Your experience could be the one thing someone else needs to hear today. And if you haven't already, please click that like button, share this video, and subscribe to our channel for more stories that understand what life throws at us. Be sure to hit that notification bell so you never miss a new story. We truly appreciate your support.